it's only week 2, so it doesn't fucking matter at all.
Yeah.
Well, besides our team name now.
Yeah.
Now it matters.
And I kind of had to score that many points to beat Taya, because she put up like 275. Like her team scored a lot of points.
Yeah, you said she would have beat everybody. I'm like, dude, I put up like 278 or something, and then I think I did 272 or 274.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, she would have beat me by like 2.
Yeah, I was looking at it. I'm like, she literally would have beat everyone but me. And I'm like, you're the one who wanted to bet, babe. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, yeah. So what was your bet before we start the podcast?
So the bet was, if she won, I had to wear Patriots gear to the bar all day on a football Sunday to like watch football. And then she's like, well, she made that first, and then she's like, what do you want if I win? And I was like thinking about it. I'm like, what do I want to make her do? And I was like, I got it. I was like, if I win, you have to change your fantasy team name for at least 1 week to like I love Matt Ewan or Matt is the best or something. And then this morning she comes home from work, she's like, all right, let's fucking do it. Let's change it. I'm like, all right, what should we change it to? So then it was like all hail Matt Ewan or something.
Did you see I changed mine to all hail me?
Yeah. I was like, I haven't even told Matt this is happening. He's gonna be so delighted when he finds out.
Oh yeah, I took a picture right away with like her name and everything, because I was like, anybody that knows the two of us is gonna understand like the relationship we have of like brother, sister, absolutely hate each other, but at the end of the day, you'll put up with each other and you love each other just enough not to kill each other.
Just enough, basically.
And I'm like, I'm gonna post this so everyone can see that we really are best friends.
She was so fucking mad.
Yeah, I fucking loved it. I died, bro. I saw it and I'm like, I gotta change something to agree, especially now that I play her.
Yeah, and then I was looking, I'm like, of course you play Matt this week too. It's just fucking perfect.
All right, you ready to start this shit?
Yeah, I'm ready.
I guess we should do a quick test. Let's just
Testing. What's that gonna sound like? Jesus. Dude, Luna is ripping ass over here. It fucking smells terrible.
Yeah. That's all right. I live with it. All right. We're going live in 3, 2, 1. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Just Browsing. Matthew, along with Zach today, and we're going to bring you a football podcast. Not a fantasy football podcast.
Because we swore we wouldn't do that.
But we're going to call this one an NFL preview. My take on it is we have 2 weeks of the NFL regular season to go off of, so we can kind of get a better understanding of where the league is headed with current injuries and kind of using these 2 games as a preseason with the starters. So, yeah, it's just going to be a quick little, preview of what's happened and where we both might think the league is going to go and then the rest of the season. And, yeah, we're going to shoot the shit on some football.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a couple weeks, so it's good to be back. We were having some trouble deciding what topic to choose, and finally we were just because I think what happens a lot of times is both of us end up with this like lack of effort in terms of wanting to research anything. So it's like, what should we do? And you like throw out a couple topics and like, yeah, well, I'm gonna have to research that a little bit. And it's like, we should do something else where we don't have to do any research. So I think that's kind of how we landed on just doing an NFL check-in, because the season has started. I know we did a couple of episodes about football right before the season, and our excitement for the season was very palpable, and now we're 2 weeks in, so we got some games under our belts. We kind of know
the Broncos are undefeated. We're winning the Super Bowl, baby.
The Broncos are undefeated. We know what some of the good teams are. We know what some of the bad teams are, some of the standout players, that sort of stuff. So we figured we'd just cover a little bit of the NFL 2 weeks in. So do you want to start with week 1 and take it back to that? Just recap some of the scores from week 1, or do you want to go over the standings, or how do you want to start?
I'm not going to go through all the scores just because I think that gets a little boring and tedious what people can look up. But I will say the league got off to a hot start with the Buccaneers-Cowboys to open the season on Thursday night.
That first Thursday night game
was a
crazy.
Thriller to watch. That was a fun game to watch, which I'm not going to lie, I didn't expect the Cowboys to be in that game at all. So
you know what my biggest takeaway from that game was that
Dak Prescott is back.
Dak did not miss a fucking beat.
You know what my biggest takeaway from that game is Tom Brady and Dak Prescott, I'm pretty sure, combined for over 900 yards passing in the first game of the NFL season.
Yeah. I just did not expect, like, I'm not like a huge Dak Prescott fan, but I do like him, and I don't wish any ill will against him, and that injury that he suffered last year, especially, what was it, like 4 games in or 5 games in?
It was early in the season.
Especially after starting at like this literally MVP level, just astronomical pace, to have such a devastating injury and have his season totally ruined. It was concerning to me. When you see injuries like that, you're like, is this guy ever going to come back and be the same?
How will he come back?
Yeah, and so I was expecting like a little bit of rustiness to start the season, and there was just none of that.
No. Or
there might have been a little bit, but
I mean, if there was, it was going to be from both teams in terms of this is the first time they've actually most of the starters actually have played football in a year. Well, for the Buccaneers, 6 months, but so yeah, I was just surprised looking at that. I thought the Buccaneers defense was going to be, all over him because I would have relied heavily on Elliott to run the ball all the time.
And they didn't.
And they didn't. They literally threw the ball like 60 times, I feel like.
So I was going to say, just his stat line real quick, in that opening Thursday night game, he throws the ball 58 times, completes 42 of those passes for 403 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 interception for a 101.4 quarterback rating. That's pretty insane coming off of this has basically been like a year or more or less since he's played football. I mean, it's basically like he did not miss a beat from the pace he was at for those first few games last year.
I will say it was a leg
remarkable.
Injury, so that in terms of quarterback play, I can understand him coming back a little bit better. But yeah, I still was surprised. I was thinking maybe 250, a couple touchdowns at most.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was expecting.
Not all of us sitting on the edge of the couch going, this game.
Yeah.
Well, what's happening?
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing is, too, in that game, they threw the ball 58 times. They only rushed it 18. Ezekiel Elliott only had 11 carries.
I know. He's on my fantasy team.
So that's something that Chuck has brought up to me a couple times because we've been watching quite a few games together so far through the first 2 weeks. And he's like, for them to be paying that guy that much money and him to get 11 carries in the game, that's just – I mean, if I was a fan of the Cowboys, I would be like, what
that money
fuck?
could have been spread out amongst defenders because their defense is what hurts more than their offense.
Exactly. Yeah. I would be upset if I was a fan of the Cowboys. Like, what's either we need to pay this guy less or like give him the football and make him earn his fucking money. You know what I mean?
I mean, let's be like, the way I like to look at it is every down back in the NFL is going away, right? It's very hard to find a 3-down back that can just do everything.
Pretty much every team has at least 2 guys.
Right. There's running backs out there that can do everything. I'm not saying those guys don't exist anymore. I'm saying if you want the career of those guys to, span out more than 10 years, you got to have someone else in there to take half the carries every day because you can't, Derrick Henry is one of the only running backs out there that I think could average 30 carries a game and stay healthy. But I just think there's no other running backs out there built like Derrick Henry, and that's why
very true,
they can't do that. Alvin Kamara, I think, is a great running back, but I don't think he's the greatest in a short down situation type thing. That's why they had great success with Mark Ingram and Latavius Murray, is because they'd get the ball, they'd bust in for a hard 2 yards, but that takes a toll on them. So, yeah, running the ball 11 times, though, is someone – what's his contract? He's probably making $20 million.
His contract is insane. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but they're paying him an insane amount of money.
So, yeah, I would agree.
To have him run the ball 11 times.
I would say minimum every game he should touch the ball 15-plus times.
Yeah,
minimum.
You would think.
And even this past week, and Tony Pollard was their leading rusher.
I know. So that's
Elliott had more touches.
Yeah.
But Pollard ran the ball better, or he had the bigger runs.
And if you watch that game too, in key situations, Pollard's getting the ball, not Zeke Elliott.
Right.
And that's what I was saying. Like we were watching, and Chuck would just every time that happens, he'd hit me and be like, "Look who's running the ball. Look who's not running the ball." I'm like, dude, I don't know. I would not be happy if I was a Cowboys fan. I think that's part of my. I have not like a lot of disdain for Ezekiel Elliott, but I have a little bit. I just think in his mind he's like the best running back in the league, and it's like, bro, you're getting paid like $90 million and you ran the ball 11 times.
I wouldn't say
I don't know.
I wouldn't say he's the best running back in the league as far as I wouldn't take him first overall if I'm drafting a running back. Derrick Henry, hands down, is the best running back right
Zeke's
now.
not even in my – if I'm drafting a running back, he's not even in my, like, top 5 considerations. There's several other guys that I would rather go after than him before I get to him. In years past, that was maybe a different story. Maybe 2-3 years ago, that was a different story. But I just think
But 2-3 years ago,
today,
the Cowboys O-line was the best in the league. Like, people you've never seen an O-line this good
and that's why
dominant.
he was blowing it up. He was dominating the league. That's not the case anymore, though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the running back position, we're going to slowly start to see these mega contracts go away. And I think you kind of saw that with like Le'Veon Bell. He was an every down back, and now he's on a practice squad in Baltimore.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was that old. I don't think he's gone through that many injuries, but all of a sudden he's just gone.
Just irrelevant.
He's just irrelevant in the league. And they had like 6 injuries, and he's still in the practice squad. It's one of those things. It's like, these guys want all this money, but like Saquon Barkley, he had an ACL tear. You just, the running back position is so hard to pay so much money for, in my opinion, because if they tear their ACL, they might not be the same.
Yeah, and a lot of them aren't. Well, and I think that's a good point that you raise, these gigantic contracts that we have been seeing in the last 5 to 10 years getting handed out to running backs. I don't blame the running backs at all for working with their agent to negotiate with the team to make just every last penny they can from the franchise, because it's smart, because they all know, just like we know, that that position has the shortest.
It's like a 10-year
career span in the NFL. It's just and especially the window to be top level running back,
right?
Not just like in
5
the
to
league.
6 years.
It's very, very short. Like you have this tiny sliver of time where you're going to be the top guy or one of the top guys and get a chance to get a contract for 4 or 5 years that's $90 million or whatever. And you need to get that when you can, because then, like we were just saying, if you have an ACL tear or you break an ankle or whatever and you come back and you're not the same the next year, at least you have your money.
Right.
But on the flip side, if you're the organization, if I'm the organization negotiating with one of those guys, I'm not willing to give a running back that much money over a long time horizon.
I would like to see, I know there's injury clauses.
No matter how good they are, because
right.
I just think it's so short-lived. Like, the odds are better that the guy's going to either his production is going to decrease dramatically or he's going to get injured, which is going to lead to a dramatic decrease in production.
Well, so this might be a controversial statement in terms of how people will, understand what I'm trying to say. When I say people should be paid by performance, people are paid by performance, technically speaking, but you get a 4-year contract, right? For $100 million. We'll just say 4 years, $100 million. That's $25 million a year if you were to just split it, no bonuses, whatever.
Right.
My opinion is you should be paid for your previous year's work, year at a time. So if I sign you to a 4-year contract, I would sign you to a 4-year contract, and I would say up to $100 million. And in that, I'm saying you get hurt year 2 and you don't play, you're going to make a minimum based on like an injury clause that would be inserted into the contract. Yeah. Somewhere saying, you're guaranteed $5 million every year, even if you're injured. But then I would also say, if you hit this mark, you hit this mark, you hit this mark, you hit this mark, shit, 1 year you could make $55 million.
Yeah.
Because you literally hit every single thing.
There's like a max you can hit.
Right. Yeah. But if you don't hit any of those and you're just like, say you're Von Miller and you have 2 sacks in the year, but you play all 16 games in the old season length, I'm paying you $3 million. I'm not paying you $28 million or whatever he's making. I'm like, listen, you did not achieve what you were supposed to achieve. Yeah. So I'm paying you based on what you gave us.
Yeah. Well, and I think I completely agree. And this is why I think, and just a real quick side tangent, you see these type of contracts in baseball a lot more than football. But like, I don't understand the whole guaranteed money for over this gigantic time horizon thing. Like, some of the baseball contracts are like 10 years, $300 million. Right. It's like, how can you, even if a guy is 22, right? Super young, in the prime of his career, he's dominating. Let's say he's like Mike Trout level. He's just dominating the league, whatever. You're going to pay him $300 million, and you're expecting the level of production that he's doing now to keep up when he's 32?
Right.
How can anyone predict that? And how are they handing out guaranteed money? It doesn't, like you said, it should not be guaranteed. It should be like you can make a maximum of $300 million if you're still hitting 38 home runs a year and however many RBIs that you're hitting now in 10 years. But if you're hitting 10 home runs and 20 RBIs, then you're not making that much money in year 10. You know what I mean? Like, and those fucking guys never last the 10-year contract.
No.
Like, they always end up, their level of production decreases dramatically within 3 to 4 years, and then they're getting traded away, and some other team has to take on the burden of that gigantic fucking contract they signed. It's just,
I think
I don't understand the rationale I understand the rationale from the side of the player because it's like, yeah, if a
give me all the money early on.
Yeah, if a team's going to give you the money, absolutely. Why would you not take that? And you're protecting yourself because if you do get hurt, you're like, I'm not worried. I got all this money in the bank. I can fucking retire and it doesn't matter. But if you're the organization, it's
guaranteed.
Like, I know. If you're the organization, it's like, why would you do that? It doesn't seem like it makes any sense. It's like, how many times has this actually happened where at the end of this gigantic contract has the guy kept the same level of production? It's very, very, very rare. Well, you know what I mean?
I don't know. I would have to speak to a sports agent and a GM somewhere to where I could understand the contracts that are being worked on and the wording in them. But I would sit there and I'd go, yeah, you can make up to this much, but we're going to pay you. We just have negotiating rights with you for 4 years. That's what we're saying. We're valuing you at $100 million possibly for 4 years, but we have just the solo negotiating rights. No other team can reach out to you and try and negotiate, a contract. We will do that, but it's going to be year to year.
Yes.
Because, and this might be a bad example, but I use it because I disagreed in a sense, and again, I don't want to get political with this, but Juwan James sitting out last year for the Broncos. He wasn't injured. The O-lineman. He sat out because of COVID. That's his choice. As, every human has their choice to do what they want. That was his choice not to participate, just like me and you could choose not to go to work.
Yeah.
But now he's filed his grievance saying, I think we still paid him.
Okay.
But now we cut him, and he's filed a grievance to claim the money. And I'm sitting there going, dude, I can't just not work for a whole year, but then message my company and say,
money.
Right, give me my full year's worth of salary.
It's like you didn't do anything.
You didn't do anything. So that's where these contracts can be so tricky, is that same with Ian Desmond. He hasn't played baseball in 2 years for the Rockies, but they're still paying his salary.
Yeah, so strange.
Why?
Yeah.
I have to show up to work, and again, they're different industries and everything, but I can't go into my boss's office and say, hey, I'm not going to work for a year, but I expect all the money to come.
I expect my
me.
paychecks to still be direct deposited every 2 weeks.
So it's one of those. I would, if my dream would be to own a sports team eventually. Will I see that happening? I got to win Mega Millions first, but
Mega Billions maybe.
Yeah, but I would sit there and I'd go, we're doing. I would try and restructure the idea of a professional sports contract.
Yeah.
And I would heavily incentivize the athlete and say, you hit all of these, you could make $55 million a year.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even put a cap on how much they could make. I would say, we're going to make a 4-year contract that is all performance based. You hit this, you hit this, you hit this, you hit this. The limit, I'll limit you at $100 million a year in your salary.
Well, and I think the reason why we're having this discussion, and the reason why if you're listening to this, if me and Matt are kind of so fired up about this, it's especially with football, you're talking about NFL football where year to year it's so different in terms of who. You have a lot of the same faces, but there are guys who will have dominant years and then just drop off the face of the planet the next year because they got hurt or for whatever reason.
Or they went to a different
variety
team
of factors.
And the team's,
they're in a different offense.
Scheme isn't the right scheme.
Whatever. And we've seen multiple instances, take for example Paxton Lynch. How much money that guy made for how much actual production he put out into the football
Brock
field.
Osweiler.
It's fucking insanity. Same thing. There's a long list of Broncos quarterbacks who
Tim
fall into
Tebow.
this exact fucking scenario we're
Case
talking
Keenum.
about. The list goes on. So anyway,
Joe Flacco.
Our point being, it's the contracts, the way they're paid. It's literally when you see this type of shit, you're like, this is the reason why normal people can't afford to go to football games. The reason you can pay some guy who has 8 good games and is just a fucking bum the rest of his career $50 million is because you charge normal people $350 for normal ass seats that should cost $50.
And we all go to it because we just enjoy the sport that much.
Or you sit at home and watch it at home.
But then they're still making money because of a TV deal.
That's the same. It's the thing about the NFL is the NFL doesn't give a fuck because they know they own Sunday. They know it. There's nothing that's going to change. I can't see
no sport in the world will ever come in and say,
I can't.
We're going to get more viewership over football.
Factor that would take NFL off the top of the mountain. Think of another sport that literally owns a day of the week. I mean,
I will say this though. Well, college football owns Saturdays, but
True.
I'll say this: football is the only sport that is played once a week. NBA could play night after night.
Yeah.
Baseball, they literally play every day of the year because they have a 3,000 game schedule. Football is played once a week.
Yeah.
It used to just be Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
Then they were like, hey, we're going to throw a Monday night game in. And
It's
then they were
literally
like,
just
hey, we're going to
infected
throw in a
every day
Thursday
now.
night game. And then college is like, hey, we're going to do Tuesday night games and
Yeah.
Wednesday night games and Thursday and Friday night games. And now we just have football
Bro,
every day.
when the season, we literally do. When the season was starting a couple weeks ago, because college football always starts like a week before the NFL,
a week or two
right?
before the NFL.
It was literally every day. There was like a game Monday night, Tuesday night,
Yep.
Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday.
And it just seems
and
to
then
keep
into
going.
the next Monday. And then it's like, oh, now this week they're going to cut down on, they're only going to play like Friday and Saturdays, but then now the NFL's back. So NFL's got Thursday, you got college football Friday,
Saturday.
college football Saturday, NFL Sunday, NFL Monday. It's like,
and then all of a sudden college football is like, we got a Tuesday game this week.
Yeah.
And you're like back on Tuesday football. And they're
Yeah.
like, we got one day until
I mean,
NFL's
it's
back.
great for sports fans and football fans, but like I love football as much as the next guy, but I get footballed out, dude. If I watch like this past weekend, I watched college football almost all day long on Saturday. I watched NFL football almost all day long on Sunday, and I was just like, you know what? I'm not watching Monday Night Football. I've had enough fucking football for the weekend.
I can't get footballed out because I don't just sit there. Like if it's a Broncos game, they've got my full attention.
Yeah.
I don't even like. You've seen me watch a Broncos game. Like leave me the fuck alone. I'm into the game. I'm one of those fans when my team is
Yeah.
playing. But like college football, I'll sit there and watch it, but I'll do other things. Like I'll be able to be like, I'm gonna miss the game. I'm gonna go do this. But I can't get footballed out because when football's not on, I sit there and go, man, if only football was on today. Like a Saturday or a Sunday right after the NFL season ends, you're like, it's just crickets. I mean, I'm a hockey fan, so I love when hockey comes on because there's always Saturday and Sunday night games usually on TV, and I'm like, yes, hockey, but. The weekend ends, and I'm like, I don't have an all-day event to look forward to.
Well, have you noticed, speaking of that, have you noticed that like when football is in the off-season, so there's no college, there's no pro football, you have so much time in your schedule to like do other things.
Yeah.
If you're like, hey, I needed to run some errands during football season, you're like, yeah, well, there's a couple of really good college football games on during the day, so I'm probably going to watch those. And then there's like the big Saturday night primetime game. I'm probably going to watch that. And then
I got to squeeze in going to Home Depot at this time and this time.
Tomorrow I'm definitely watching the Broncos at 11, and then I'll probably watch a couple of other games, and then I'll probably watch Sunday Night Football. You're like, I got to go at like 9 in the morning to the grocery store or else I'm going to not be able to go.
Or I'm going to have to go at 9 at night, but then I might miss the closing of the Sunday night game, which is a really good game.
Yeah.
I'm just not getting groceries because I can't go Monday night because there might be a good Monday night game, and then Tuesday night, who knows?
This is what I mean.
Bethune Cookman might take Stony Brook to overtime, and then I'm missing an overtime game.
So when football season's over, you're like, oh, I have like all day Saturday, all day Sunday to like do some stuff.
Like you wake up and you're like,
just
I don't
sitting
got to
there.
set a
like,
fantasy lineup today.
No fantasy lineup, nothing to stress about.
What do I do?
It is really like, I mean, the reason why we're sitting here dedicating an entire podcast to football is because we love football. I just think there are some things that are like really blown out of proportion, which is like some of the contracts. It's like there's no reason some of these guys should be making this much money.
Right, and
it's insanity. I mean, there are some guys who should because they are the best of the best. Like they're
like
the
Patrick
best,
Mahomes,
the
$500
best
billion contract.
Yeah. But like there are other guys where they pay them this money, and you're like, based on what? The guy had like less than one good season,
like Joe Flacco,
and then all of a sudden you're gonna pay him like he's Aaron Rodgers. He's not Aaron Rodgers.
Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl, and they're like, "Here, take our entire payroll." And
they literally paid him so much they got rid of their entire Super Bowl winning team because they couldn't afford to pay anyone else.
Because they had to pay Joe Flacco,
and then he was Joe Flacco for the next 8 years.
And Lamar Jackson enter.
So anyway, we got really derailed. We covered one game.
Yeah, that's why we're not going to go score by score. But I will say...
True. We won't go score by score. So to loop it back, the opening Thursday night game of the season between the Cowboys and the Buccaneers
was a great way to
super
start
exciting.
off the season.
And by the way, we'll hop to week 2 here in a minute, but shit, Tom Brady looks incredible throughout the first 2 games of the year for being 115 years old.
Dude...
He threw like 4 touchdowns yesterday and like 350 yards or something.
Yeah, I hate the guy, but I got to give it to him. The dude knows football, and
it's just remarkable. I just don't understand how like people have been saying
this is
for
the
like
best offense he's
10
ever had.
years. Brady's probably done here in the next year or two. Brady's probably washed up.
Every time someone says that, I go, I hope so. And then I'm like,
I think there's
in
a
my,
lot
in
of
my
people
head.
who
I'm
do.
like, can someone just tear his knee? And I'm like,
And then
I'm
he-
pretty sure he's had 6 ACL.
He just comes
surgeries
back
already,
and wins
so.
another fucking Super Bowl. Last year was the most mind-blowing thing to me ever because everyone kept being like, "Oh, bro, this Buccaneers offense that he's got is incredible. He's going to go back to the Super Bowl. He's going to win the Super Bowl." I'm like, bro,
defense is what
there's
it
not
is.
a fucking chance he goes back to the Super Bowl. Not a chance. I'm like, maybe they're a playoff team, but he's not going back to the Super Bowl. Sure enough, they're in the playoffs. They make it all the way to the fucking Super Bowl. I'm like, they're playing the Chiefs. There's no way he wins the Super Bowl. They're playing the Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense is just fucking insane. He's not going to win. And then they blow
Most
out
boring Super Bowl ever.
the Chiefs and win easily.
Well, okay, I will say
And
this.
he's 9 million years old.
I will
don't
say this.
understand it.
Going into last year, I looked at that Buccaneers team and I go, that offense is loaded. And it's loaded.
It is
it's a
pretty
loaded.
remarkable.
It's his best offense ever.
Yeah.
No one can argue against me on that. People are like, well, Randy Moss. And I'm like, yeah, but you have Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones
Yeah,
Jr. Like the list is just beyond.
I was talking to Chuck the other day on Sunday, and I said I think the only just off the top of my head, I haven't done any research, but just off the top of my head, probably the only other year you could point to where he had an offense that might be in the conversation is that 2007 year where he had Randy Moss.
right, but even then, you
Their
look at
offense
it and you're
was
just like,
really fucking good that year, but like, which it's not as good as what he's got now in the Buccaneers. I don't think
this is his best offense he's ever had, and the reason they won last year, and if you want to argue with me, go for it, is their defense. Their defense wasn't supposed to be a top-notch defense last year. They were supposed to be there to win games, but not like they're not going to beat the Chiefs type win games. And their defense was that exact type of defense. They were like, we're going to beat everybody. We're the defense that just
Well, the fact that they threw off Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense to the tune of what they did is remarkable.
right, because you could argue that offense is just as is stacked. You have
Or
Tyreek
more.
Hill, Travis Kelce. They had
that fucking
Le'Veon
offense
Bell.
scored at least 35 points in like every game
Yeah,
last season.
and then they score, 7 in the Super Bowl or
Yeah.
10 or whatever?
That's why it was so shocking. It's just like,
Like-
what am I watching? What's happening?
It was all because the Buccaneers defense was slept on last year, and they showed up and were the best defense in the league. That's why they won a Super Bowl. Best defense in the league, stacked with Tom Brady and the best offense he's ever had. The dude could have had a Peyton Manning 2015 type game, and they still would have won that Super Bowl against the Chiefs.
Dude, so you want to know what's funny? I'll touch briefly on fantasy, but we've already discussed we're not doing fantasy recaps.
So this week in Fantasy Recap.
Week 1, this Dallas and Tampa Bay game, Taya had Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski on her team, but she had them both on the bench.
Yeah, and
she was asking me about both of them, and I was like, you have Aaron Rodgers
at
and
Lauren's
Patrick
birthday
Mahomes.
party.
Don't start Brady. Those two are obvious starts. And then I think whoever she had at tight end, I was like, Gronkowski had a bunch of games last year where he had like 6 fantasy points. I'm like, that guy, he's not the Gronkowski of 5 years ago.
Last year,
I'm like,
he
just
would
leave him
catch
on
the
bench.
ball in the end zone one time. He'd be like
Yeah.
1 for 6 yards and a
Yes.
touchdown. You're like, solid 7 points.
Yeah,
Gronk.
that's
Nice.
all he would do pretty much all year until the Super Bowl where he caught like 2 touchdowns.
Right.
So I'm like, leave him on the bench. Your other 2 guys are much better. And then what happens? Brady and Gronk have like insanely good fucking games. I'm like, babe, I'm sorry.
And
Clearly, I don't know what the
everybody
fuck
on
you're
that
talking
team but Mike Evans touched the ball on their
about.
offense.
Yeah.
And good thing I had Mike Evans on my team.
And the fact that Gronk came back and has been this good too is like just another thing that I would have never predicted.
Well, dude, I mean, he's just a freak athlete. Like,
He is.
he's just a freak of nature, and he's young, though. He's still young.
Yeah, but when he retired, so they win the Super Bowl, he retires. Guy's won like multiple Super Bowls. He's one of the best tight ends of all time. He'd had an insane amount of injuries. I'm like, great, Gronk, retire, go fucking party. You're like 30 years old or
That's what he
whatever.
did.
You've won 2 Super Bowls. You have millions of dollars. Go party on yachts and go on game shows and go do pro wrestling, whatever the fuck you want to do. And then he's like, nah, I'm coming back. And I'm like, why? And he wins the Super Bowl.
Bro,
first year back. I'm
he
like,
came back in better shape than he'd ever looked in his career.
it's insane. I don't get it.
Well, they got millions of dollars to spend on their bodies.
He probably went over to Brady's house and drank whatever fucking smoothie that Brady has
Water
in his
out of
house.
the Holy Grail.
Literally, I was just about to say he gets water from the fountain of youth and like mixes it with fucking
muscle milk.
yeah, muscle milk and makes a fucking smoothie, and that's why he's still doing what he's doing. I don't know, man. Doesn't make any sense. That guy's remarkable.
I don't think the Buccaneers repeat, but definitely could see them back in the Super Bowl.
Dude, so someone was asking me this weekend. They're like, who do you see in the Super Bowl? And I'm like,
the Denver Broncos.
You know, it's honestly, as much as I hate to say it, it would not shock me to see Tampa Bay back in the Super Bowl.
Well, so jumping back into our discussion of an NFL preview type thing, we can use this. I going into the season, I thought if Aaron Rodgers bought in with the Packers, I could see them making a Super Bowl run.
So far, we have
as far as the NFC goes, I could see them doing it, and then maybe an NFC West team like Seattle, San Francisco, or Arizona. Other than that, the NFC to me was kind of like Green Bay, Tampa, and then no one from the NFC East. I'm not worried about the Giants, the Washington football team, the Cowboys, or the Eagles. That division might end in like a 7-9 season again. So to me, it was Buccaneers, Packers, and maybe an NFC West team, would sneak in, but they all have to fight each other. After watching the Saints beat the Packers and Aaron Rodgers looked like he could care less to be out there, but he was just making his $21 million or whatever he's making, I go, there is no one in the way of the Buccaneers in terms of the NFC, from what I've seen, that can slow them down to where the Buccaneers will not be back in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the standings by conference right now, and I'm trying to find a team that, I mean, through 2 games, granted, this is a 2-game sample size we're looking at. I don't know who else. I mean, okay, so the top teams, basically, who are still undefeated in the NFC are Tampa Bay, San Francisco, LA Rams, Arizona Cardinals, and Carolina Panthers. I mean, Arizona's looked really good on offense. The Rams look pretty good, and San Francisco looks much better than they did last year, but, like, I see Tampa Bay beating all those teams.
I see Tampa getting better because they've looked weak in these first 2 games. When I say weak, I'm just saying they look like there's vulnerabilities in these first couple games. They let the Falcons hang in there with them this past weekend.
And the Falcons are not very good.
The Falcons are my pick to end in the bottom 5.
They can't score any points, man.
The offense is just bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I see Tampa Bay making it back. Now you get to the AFC, and I'm like, okay, well, after last week, I go, the Bills were Super Bowl contenders, but then they lost at home to the Steelers.
Mm-hmm. That was week 1, wasn't it?
Right, I'm still week 1.
Yeah.
The Broncos are obviously Super Bowl contenders just because they're my favorite team.
Obviously.
No, we have a defense that we can contend for a playoff spot. I will say the Broncos will make the playoffs.
Dude, how crazy is it that in the AFC, the only 2 undefeated teams left are the Raiders and the Broncos?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I thought the Titans would come out hot. They got smoked by the Cardinals last week. I thought that the Chiefs, were going to be the team to beat again, which I don't think they still aren't the team to beat. But a 4-point home win against the Browns. Again, the Browns are a good team. And then
I think Kansas City's definitely still the team to beat in the AFC. That would be my...
Right, but then like the Ravens losing at... Who did the Ravens lose to? They lost it away to the Raiders. I'm like, the Raiders? Like, come on. Like, seriously? So
Wasn't
it was
that
just,
game like an overtime game or something?
Dude, that was a really fun Monday night game.
I didn't watch that one. I remember
really
that was
fun
one
Monday
that I
night
did
game.
Not see.
But it's one of those things I sit there and I go, NFC, as much as it pains me to say Tom Brady back in the Super Bowl, I don't know if the Buccaneers have anything in their way. Maybe the Rams and the Packers after this past week. AFC, you could have the Ravens, you could have the Chiefs, the Browns, the Titans, the Bills, and the Broncos.
Yeah.
The Broncos are my dark horse, like dark.
You want to talk a little Broncos talk real quick?
Oh, do I ever?
I think they look not great, but pretty decent throughout the first 2 games.
So as I've told everybody, the Broncos need a quarterback that can take care of the ball, score between 24 and 28 points a game, and manage the clock. We have 1 turnover, which cost us points because it was on the opponent's 4-yard line. So we were, I'm not going to say guaranteed, but we were guaranteed at least 3 points.
Give up some points there, yeah.
But that's our 1 turnover from a tight end fumbling.
Time of possession on offense has been
Our time of
huge.
possession has been great, which has given our defense time to rest.
Yep.
Which they've never had since Peyton Manning left, pretty much. This is arguably our best defense since 2015. We've got injuries now. Chubb's out for a little while because he's having surgery again, and I don't know how long Darby's going to be out, but it's one of those things. the team's playing as I expect them to, and people are like, well, they have the 2 weakest teams, and they get the 3rd weakest team or the weakest team in the Jets, and I'm like, yeah, but they didn't make their schedule.
Yeah.
You got to play to the schedule.
My impressions so far have been I like the decision to start Teddy Bridgewater over Drew Lock a lot.
Every week he's made it but the 2 weeks he's made it look like a very smart decision.
He's made it look like a very smart decision. Because I was telling one of my coworkers who's a big Broncos fan before the season, I'm like, if it was me, I might start Drew Lock first game or two, see how he looks, and then if he's not getting it done, just pull the trigger early and make the switch. But I like the fact that they were just like, you know what, going into the season, we need to have some consistency at quarterback, and Teddy's our guy.
I mean, we also hadn't won a game in September since 2018 or whatever. Case Keenum was our quarterback.
I think it's definitely been the right decision. I'm really happy to see Teddy Bridgewater back as a starting quarterback and having some real success in the NFL. He definitely deserves it. I think I'm cautiously optimistic because, like you said, we start the year playing 3 teams in a row who are like bottom of the barrel teams in the NFL. So hopefully, if we beat the Jets next week, we start 3-0. That always helps to win the games you're expected to win. I'm just cautiously optimistic because I still feel like I would like to see us score more points. We have been scoring like in the mid-20s, which is good, but
better than the past 3 years.
But when you go up against like the Raiders and the Chiefs and the Chargers, you need to put more points on the board. I'm just a little bit nervous that we still can't quite get our offense to like really light up the scoreboard like we kind of need to.
I'll agree with that, but then I also come back to
again. It's early. It's 2 games in, so we'll see.
But I come back to They're putting up enough points to where the possession that they have, we're not going out there and going 3 and outs every possession, right?
Right.
We're going out there having long drives that as long as they end in points, even if it's not a touchdown, but we end in points and we eat up 8 minutes of clock and our defense can go out there and then get a stop, that all adds up in terms of how well the offense is playing. I think Bridgewater is great. He's looked so poised back in the pocket that, like, There's multiple plays I sit there and I go, Drew Lock would have crumbled, or he would have taken the sack, or he would have made a bad decision. Bridgewater just looks so calm, cool, collected back there that I'm like, this dude is looking like, I mean, he is a ex-Pro Bowl quarterback. When he played with the Vikings, he was a great quarterback.
Yes, he was.
And he got hurt, and then he was great with the Saints when he was there. And then Carolina, I just didn't think fit him well. And now he's in an offense which Pat Shurmur was his offensive coordinator in Minnesota, where he was having good success. So now he's back within a familiar offense, which is playing very well. And after this week, we should beat the Jets. It's the NFL, so anything can happen, but we should beat them. I believe we're at the Steelers and then Ravens at home. So at the Steelers will be our first test. I don't think the Steelers are anything special. They have a good defense.
They're always tough.
Their offense is just atrocious. So if our defense can stop their offense from scoring 7 points, which I feel like we can, and our offense can maintain the ball and put up, I think the Broncos win next week with 23 points again. Not next week, but the week after against the Steelers with 23 points, because I don't think the Steelers have an offense this year. So I think our first true test comes against the Ravens in week 5.
That'll definitely be a tough game. Just really quickly, listen to this. So I'm looking at like the AFC breakdown, the top teams, and I filtered it by point differential because I was looking at we were just talking about how many points the Broncos are putting up versus how much they're giving up and stuff like that. So through 2 games, they've scored 50 points. So they're averaging 25 points a game, and they've only given up 26 points. They have a point differential of plus 24, which is the second best point differential in the AFC behind Buffalo, who has a plus 28. So you got to think it's trending positively that I think the offense does look better than it has the last 2 or 3 seasons I've watched. So if we can keep scoring at least 25 points a game and maybe tick that up a little bit higher, and then the defense keeps playing at the same level they're playing, you're putting yourself in a really good position to win a lot of football games.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think the only teams you would really struggle against are teams that just light up the scoreboard, like Kansas City. You know what
Kansas City, Baltimore, Buffalo, but I don't know if we played Buffalo this year. I can't remember. But it's one of those, and like I've said, and I think me and you talked about it, if we can score 24 to 28 points a game, we will win a lot of football games. We're not going to go undefeated. That's an unrealistic expectation. I don't think the Broncos are going to win the Super Bowl this year. If they do, great. But I think we could realistically end it as a 12-5 record and be in the playoffs. I truly think we can beat the Raiders. I think we can beat the Chargers. We might be we might be able to steal a game from the Chiefs this year. You never know.
They do look, so far throughout the first 2 games, the Chiefs look mortal this year. They're still really good, but they look beatable. You know what I mean? Like you stand some sort of a chance to beat them if you play with your A game.
As we've stated multiple times, it is early, so this,
Yeah, we're
after say week 8, we'll really know what's going to happen.
We're basing this all off of a 2-game sample size. So, and granted, something like that. Again, just as a disclaimer, it's like 2-game sample size is really hard to tell because look at Green Bay's 2-game sample size. Like, they looked like dog shit, and then they looked really good.
But then they look really good against a Detroit Lions team.
Exactly.
And so you're like,
so how good is this team really? Right. No one really knows. You won't know until 8 weeks from now or whatever.
Right. But I mean, looking at the Broncos' schedule, we play the AFC or the NFC East. So we get Washington, we get the Eagles, we get the Cowboys. I don't think any of those teams are like, surefire wins, but I don't think any of the I think we should beat Washington for sure. But I don't think any of those teams are, surefire wins for them playing against the Broncos. Like, we got the easiest schedule, one of the easiest schedules in the NFL.
You and I were talking about that. You pointed that out before the season started. You're like, dude, our first 3 games are really easy.
We should start 3-0.
We should start 3-0. And I think the fact that we started 2-0 is really promising, but it's like, all right, let's keep this going. Because you have to win the games that you're expected to win.
Yep.
Because when you get to start playing the tougher teams like the Ravens and the Steelers, those are the ones where it's like, okay, if you lose them, at least you've still won the games you needed to win.
Right, to put yourself in a positive situation.
Put yourself in a positive situation for the playoffs.
Right, so if we could beat the Steelers, say we started the season 4-0, and we lose to the Ravens, we're right where we want to be.
Yeah.
That we're beyond where we want to be, in my opinion.
I think that little stretch there right after, so we play the Jets next week.
Steelers, Ravens, Browns.
Got Ravens, Steelers, Raiders, Browns. That's going to be a tough stretch. I mean, those are some good
That's
teams.
when we will see the Denver Broncos team.
Yeah.
And cross our fingers they can stay healthy, because if we get bitten by the injury bug, it's over. We're one of those teams, I feel like we get bit by the injury bug, it's just over. Like last year and the year before that, like our whole team just like falls apart. And it's just like,
and it's a long season. It's a longer season this year than it was last year.
It's a longer season, yeah. And we've already lost Bradley Chubb, who's played a half game.
So what's the word on his thing?
He's having a bone spur removed from his ankle, so he's going to have microscopic surgery. So I think it's more just letting it heal properly, and then.
So what's that? Probably a few weeks, maybe.
Yeah, he said he'll hopefully be back later this season. So I'm like, is later this season like?
Last 4 games? Or?
Right. Like, when will you show up? Yeah. Like, when will you be back? So, hopefully not too long.
The promising thing is, from what I can tell, Von Miller is looking really good so far.
He's looking Super Bowl 50.
Yeah, he's looking like top form,
so
Von Miller.
Von, if you're listening to this, which I know you are, stay healthy. No, but, yeah, I mean, we won't be able to tell anything about anybody in the league until probably week 8, and then we'll be able to say, not for sure, but these are the good teams and these are the bad teams.
Yeah,
and these are the teams that you got to go in and compete against. So, but I mean, through 2 weeks, we've had really good games, multiple 1-point games, great, low scoring or high scoring close games. I'm just more, I'm more shocked that, there's certain teams that are losing some of these games. Like, I would have never pegged the Saints to lose to the Panthers 26-7.
Dude, that was so weird. So I think the 2 teams that really stand out to me of having like a real dichotomy between game 1 and game 2 is the Packers and the Saints.
And they played each other week 1.
So strange. The Saints looked really good week 1 and looked terrible week 2. And same thing, kind of the reverse for Packers. Packers looked terrible week 1 and looked really good week 2. Night. So it's like, what the hell are we supposed to make of this? You know what I mean?
Right. So, I mean, I don't know. I'll say the person that stood out the most to me this year and who I think is the front runner for MVP right now is Kyler Murray.
Dude.
The dude's having a tremendous season so far through 2 weeks that I would have never expected.
I have him in my work league, so I've been paying extra attention this year than I normally do. But I was actually telling Caleb the other day about our discussion, how we broke down the Jameis Winston versus Marcus Mariota careers, and now we've made this little, not really like a wager, but like you're putting your money on Kyler Murray, I'm putting my money on Lamar Jackson, and we're going to see in 10 years' time who has the better career type thing. So I'm like, it's very interesting to see.
Yeah, we bet a Lamborghini on it, so.
It's very interesting to see so far. Kyler Murray, I think, is continuing to get better and better. I think the only thing with Kyler Murray that I've noticed that is holding him back from just being like, oh my God, this guy's the MVP of the league, is his turnover issues.
Yeah.
He still has a little bit of an issue with turnovers. But the guy is like literally watching a fucking video game, like a Madden player out there. It's insane.
I will say, I think he's a better passer than Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's definitely a good quarterback overall. But
Lamar Jackson, got a cannon, dude.
Lamar Jackson, I think you could pinpoint more as a running quarterback in terms of I'm more worried about him beating me with his legs. And that also goes to say Kyler Murray has better offensive weapons, in my opinion, with like DeAndre Hopkins, and the running backs are better just because the Ravens don't have any running backs because they're all left their ACLs out on the practice field. But, yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray, dude, I picked him in fantasy because last year he did wonders for me.
Yeah. He had a really good year last year, and I think he's shown flashes of being really good in his first. What is this, year 3 or year 4 for him?
Year 3, I believe.
Year 3? He's shown flashes in the first 2 years of being really good, but I think if he keeps up the pace he's on now, it'll be like, oh, shit. Kyler Murray's like one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. That guy's really good.
I like, and I was talking with someone, I think, earlier today on it. I like the ushering in of new quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah, dude. I love it.
We can't yet say that Tom Brady's out because he just signed like a 14-year contract. But, like, Aaron Rodgers is getting old. Matt Ryan's getting old. Stafford's getting old. Roethlisberger's getting old. Brady's getting old. Newton's already gone. We're getting into this new – it's the Mahomes, even Russell Wilson, Murray, Jackson, used to be Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
I think Trevor Lawrence could be a hell of a player. We're ushering in this new era of quarterback.
And don't forget about, like, Justin Herbert and Josh Allen.
Right.
Yeah. It's exciting,
That's
man.
just
There's a lot of really good young quarterbacks.
And they're all like a dual threat type quarterback. Josh Allen can run the ball. Justin Herbert can run the ball. Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson. Patrick Mahomes is probably the only true pocket passer, but even he can run the ball.
He's got some wheels.
He's athletic enough to run the ball more than any of the other, like Matt Ryan. He's not like a true pocket passer like them. He can run the ball. He just will beat you with his arm.
Yeah.
So it's fun to watch this new ushering in of like out with the old pocket passing type system and in with this new higher scoring offenses because it makes the games more exciting. Let's be real.
Yeah.
A 10-3 Super Bowl is not fun to watch.
Yeah.
But give me like a 48 to 41 Super Bowl where I'm like, oh my God, like is this ever going to end? Like who stops who first to win the game?
And you know what I think I've noticed by watching a lot of these young quarterbacks, and even it's not even the quarterback position sometimes, it extends to some of the younger receivers and running backs we have now too. These guys have like, a lot of these guys have this X factor of they're just like playmakers. You know what I mean? Like these guys are not only like insanely athletically gifted and competitive, but they're just playmakers. Like when a play needs to be made in a key situation, they step up and make a fucking great play.
Like Lamar Jackson.
And that's incredibly exciting to watch. You know what I mean?
When Harbaugh goes, Lamar, do you want to go for this? Hey, Lamar, do you want to go for this? Okay.
Yeah.
And then he gets the first down. I'm like.
That was the Sunday night game you're talking about, right? For anyone who doesn't know what Matt's talking about. Sunday night, they beat the Chiefs.
I'm sitting there and I'm going, as a head coach, now this is a weird situation, but as a head coach, I look out at my young quarterback and say, do you want to go for this? And he says yes. I go, I'm going to trust in him then.
Yeah.
Because if I give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes, whether I punt it or we don't get it, I give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. Who has Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill.
That was the thing, as I was listening to like Chris Collinsworth and Al Michaels break it down in that situation. So for people who didn't watch the game, the situation was basically like the Ravens have the ball. There's not a lot of
4th and 1 at the third. At the Chiefs 40.
Yeah, there's not a lot of time left in the game. It's fourth quarter. They're trying to get a couple of first downs, make the Chiefs burn their timeouts, and end the game basically because they're up by I don't know what they were up by.
They only let me see. They won by 1. So they were only up by 1.
So they were only up by 1, I guess. And the decision, it comes down to 4th and 1. they basically have to get a first down in order to ice the game. Like they have
if they get a first down, they win the game.
If they get a first down,
once,
they win the game. Or the alternative is you punt it away with a minute and 10 seconds left or something like that.
They would have gotten the ball, I think, with a minute. Or you don't get it if you go for it.
Yeah, and you're giving Patrick Mahomes the ball back.
And they just have to get in a field goal range. They don't have to score a touchdown. They just have to get in field goal range. I
think really there's one thing that you can really say and point to with certain quarterbacks who come around in the league that are like, that dude is just a fucking badass and other teams are scared of him. Aaron Rodgers has that X factor and has in the past. Tom Brady has had that X factor in the past, and Mahomes now has it, where it's like we literally
can't give them the ball.
Are willing to risk losing this game, going for this 4th and 1 because we're so scared of giving him the ball back because there's you're virtually guaranteeing that he's going to march right down the field and get his team in position to score.
A prime example of that is week 1 when the Cowboys took the lead over Tom Brady. Tom Brady had 2 timeouts left and a minute 20 to work with. We were all sitting on the couches looking at each other, and we're like, Tom Brady has a full 15-minute quarter ahead of him, and he just has to get into field goal range.
Yeah.
And for some reason, and I'm not saying it's easy, but no defense in the fucking league can find out how to stop Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, or Aaron Rodgers in a 2-minute situation moving down the field. I'm not saying it's easy, but they're going to throw the ball.
Yeah.
And they only need to get in field goal range.
I think that's the thing that makes it even more impressive. It's just they know the other team's defensive coordinators and defensive players know what's coming, and they still can't stop it most of the time.
Oh yeah, even going back with Tom Brady, when the Broncos won the Super Bowl in 2015, we had to beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
We were up by 8 points, and I'm like, all right, we at least can't lose this game. Whether they score a touchdown and get a 2-point, we can't lose the game. But why did we give Tom Brady the ball back with a minute?
That's too
our
much
defense
time
was so good, and I'm like,
time.
okay, our defense is good this year, though. We're going to get a stop. We're going to win the game. No, big play to Gronk down the middle. I'm like, can no one guard this? Just tackle him in the middle of the field if you have to.
Yeah.
Literally hold him at the line of scrimmage for a 5-yard penalty, but you run some time off the clock.
Yeah.
No, 40-yard play. And I'm sitting there fuming. I'm like, why? Just stop them. All of a sudden they're in the end zone. And I'm like, we're going to let them tie the game, and we're not going to go to the Super Bowl. And then we luckily got a pick in the end zone because we pressured Tom Brady. And I'm like, why though? Why were we ever in this situation when it was completely avoidable?
It's there's just certain, and as a fan, if you watch a lot of sports, there's this untangible thing that you can just feel in the air when you know something's going to happen. If you've watched enough basketball games or football games or whatever,
you get that vibe from what's happening on the
and
floor.
One of those vibes is what we were just talking about, which is your team's up, but not by enough to be comfortable. You're playing a Tom Brady or you're playing a Patrick Mahomes, and they have a minute and a half left with 2 timeouts, and you're like, I don't like this. I don't like this at all because he's going to come down. It's too much time. He has timeouts, and he has too many weapons. And sure enough, you've just seen it too many times. It's like the basketball comparison would be your team's up by 3 or whatever, and you're playing against Kobe, and Kobe's coming down the court, and you're like, I don't know, man. I just got a bad feeling Kobe's going to he's got the look in his eyes,
and
he's just going to come down and score.
Yeah.
That's
and then they're
going to
get the ball back, and they're going to win the game somehow.
Yeah. And the worst feeling ever is when you're watching your team, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, whatever, and you're barely holding on to a lead, and the other team is inching back, and you're like, oh my God, we're going to fucking blow this game. And the other team ends up tying it, and then you go into overtime, you're like, we're going to lose.
We need to find an Atlanta Falcons football fan to talk about that shit.
Yeah, because you're like, we were barely going to get out of this in regulation, and now you're giving this team an extra 5 minutes, an extra 15 minutes,
the
whatever
team
it is.
Hot right now. They're the team coming.
They have
on.
all the momentum on their side. You're like, we're fucked. I can't tell you how many times I've been watching games where my team is on the other side of that, and I'm like, it's over.
Dude,
we shouldn't have let them go into overtime.
Another
they have
prime
too much
Broncos
now.
example that pains me still to this day is I think it was Super Bowl 47 maybe. When we lost to Seattle.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as that snap went over Manning's head, I go, we lost. We lost the game because we came out and we weren't prepared.
Yeah.
We came out and that was the first snap of the game.
Yeah.
And we came out and we did that. I was like, we're not prepared.
Yeah. And sure enough, the rest of the game
and sure enough, the rest of the game, the team that was the best offense ever in the NFL.
Yeah.
And we put up, 9 points or whatever?
Yeah. was like 43-9 or
like,
something.
No bad snaps like that all season long.
Yeah.
Boom, over the head, safety. And I'm sitting there going, this is game's over.
Yeah.
Like, this game is over. And then you jump to 2015 when we won the Super Bowl. Von Miller gets the sack, and I go, this game's over. This defense is flying.
Yeah.
I mean, Cam Newton is scared. And then you could see that in certain plays throughout the whole game. It was just you got that feeling like the defense is going to win this game.
You had a feeling like this defense has this season's regular season MVP and one of the best offenses in the league on their heels.
Oh, yeah. From the get-go.
Yeah, and you're like, I have a good feeling about this.
And then
I don't think a lot of people who don't watch a ton of sports know exactly when to recognize that stuff, but like people who watch a lot of sports like you and I do, it's like it's all a game of momentum. You know, you can just feel
especially
this momentum.
like a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and you're like, no matter what's happening or has happened, I'm putting my money on this team because they got all the fucking whatever it is, the juju, the karma, whatever on their side right now. You know what I mean?
As soon as like in the Super Bowl when we won, as soon as he had that sack, I'm like, in my head, I'm sitting there going, we won the game. We just won the game with that defensive touchdown. You don't score many defensive touchdowns in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I was like, we just won the game. But I'm also sitting there going, I got to be a good fan and not go, we won the Super Bowl because it's the first quarter. We didn't win the Super Bowl yet. We have plenty of football left to play.
Yeah.
But
of course, as soon as you do that, you fucking jinx it, and then it
and then
flips,
Cam Newton, But I'm sitting there going, we're going to get more turnovers this game, and we're going to capitalize off of them. And sure enough, we got more sacks at big times, turnovers at big times, and then we finally score a touchdown. And I'm sitting there going, that all stemmed from Von Miller's first sack, getting that strip fumble, and we recovered it for a touchdown.
It just sets the tone.
That started it.
Yeah.
Because the defense wasn't tired. They just got a touchdown.
Yeah.
And now they're putting that offense that is all drained and like, damn, like
defeated.
We just let that happen right back up against them. And that defense is swarming. They're like, all right, we're hot.
Yeah,
and
they're just buzzing.
And their offense is sitting on the bench like, all right, let us come in. And then they come in and they're like, all right, 3 and out. And I'm like, sick guys. All right, put that defense. Like, let's just keep the defense on the field. They're scoring more points than the offense today.
Oh, man.
But, yeah, I mean, as far as this year goes, right now, I'm thinking Chiefs Bucks again, which I pray it doesn't happen.
That's the thing is, like, I'm never very good. I don't try and make Super Bowl predictions or anything like that because I'm never very good at it because the season's too long. Too many things can happen. One injury,
Tom Brady gets hurt, Bucks season's over.
Yeah, but I think right now, knowing what we know last year and the first 2 games of this year, it's like I really couldn't fault you if you were like, hey, it's going to be a rematch of the Chiefs and Buccaneers. It's like, shit, I haven't seen anything so far that's going to tell me otherwise. You know what I mean?
Going back to our original discussion, let me find it. Let me move all this fun stuff. I had, there's even more shit in the way.
Of course, it's the bottom paper.
But I had, the Ravens and Browns finishing atop the AFC North, which so far I think is going to happen. I had the Bills finishing atop the AFC East, which the Jets, rookie quarterback, it's going to be a tough year for them. Hang in there, Jets fans. I think Zach Wilson could do good. But the Dolphins, Tua's out.
Yeah.
The Patriots just unknown. I think Mac Jones is going to be good for them, which sucks because I hate the Patriots, but I like Mac Jones, so they're going to have a good team in the future. So the Bills, clear-cut favorite to win that. The South, the Titans, the Colts, the Texans, Jaguars. Jaguars, rookie quarterback. Again, I think Trevor Lawrence can be great. Just got to give him time.
Yeah.
The Texans lost Tyrod Taylor, so now they're starting a freshman quarterback. They're starting a freshman quarterback. Yeah. He's 19 years old.
Redshirt freshman.
Yeah. The Colts just lost Carson Wentz to a double sprained ankles.
Dude, there was so many big injuries this past weekend.
And the Titans they got Derek. I'll say this again. Running backs, if you have a good running back like Derrick Henry and you can get your run game going, you're going to win a lot of football games. The Titans were losing to the Seahawks, and they finally got Derrick Henry going, and guess what? They won the game.
Dominated.
So I think the Titans, again, win the South. And then the West, the Chiefs, I thought the Raiders were going to be the worst team. So far, the Raiders are looking like the best team in the AFC West. Long season, I know. But I thought the Chiefs, the Broncos, Chargers, and Raiders is how it would finish out. And, I mean, realistically, that could still be the exact order. I mean, they all got to play each other, and they haven't played each other yet, and they're all playing good football.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I said the Chiefs-Buccaneers was what the Super Bowl was going to be. My MVP pick, and I'm still standing by this, is Stafford. I think he's going to...
He's looked pretty good throughout week 1 especially. He had a really good game. And then week 2 he played pretty solid, but not quite as good.
I think he'll.
Dude, I'm totally on
continue
board
on
with
it.
you on that one. Matt Stafford's my guy. I'm team Matt Stafford this year
Dude.
all the way.
And then my Super Bowl sleeper has been the Bills, which after week 1 I'm like, nah. But I think the Bills will still be my Super Bowl sleeper. That like a legit chance. The Super Bowl I want to see is the Broncos and the Saints.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I have
one.
more faith in the Broncos making the Super Bowl than I do the Saints. Probably.
Defensive Player of the Year, I have Von Miller, which
He's
the way
off to a good start.
Been playing is you know. And then Offensive Player, I had Derrick Henry, but after game 1, I'm like, yeah, maybe not. Maybe it's going to be a quarterback again. But then after week 2, I'm like, that's all he needed to get started. So
Dude,
look out,
that guy's such a
2,000-yard
monster.
season. Now you give him another game too to rack up more points and yards.
Yeah,
Whew.
he had a monster week.
I will say my offensive rookie of the year is probably going to be a quarterback, and I just don't know who yet. Maybe Trevor Lawrence.
It might be.
Or Mac Jones.
How has Zach Wilson looked so far? Because
Not good. He just had
really?
four picks in his last week.
Yikes. Because I don't pay attention to Jets football because Jets football could not be more relevant to my life.
You got to watch him this week, so.
Yeah, I guess that is true. I think I might tune in just to see like what's going on with him. You know what I mean?
I'm going to watch just Zach Wilson this week,
Yeah.
even though he plays the Broncos.
Well, I just haven't had a chance. Like a lot of these guys that are so new, you know how you watch just your teams and then some of the games that are on primetime where you're at, and you don't end up seeing, for whatever reason, Trevor Lawrence, or you don't end up seeing Mac Jones or whatever. And you're like, I kind of want to see this guy, because looking at the stats gives you one impression, but then like seeing him play gives you, there's like the eye test type thing. And so I don't know. I kind of want to see Zach Wilson play and see what he looks like.
Again, he's on a bad Jets team, so
Dude,
they got to give him time. They got to.
That's the thing is, until the Jets turn around somehow from being like the worst team in the league, any quarterback who goes there who is worth his salt is going to look rough for a while because he's just surrounded by a team that's just terrible. You know what I mean?
Same with like the Jaguars.
It's so hard to look good there.
They have like some good players, but it's one of those things like they just don't have like a good solid team.
Yeah, they're just not a good team.
I think it's also funny like
it's got to be hard on Trevor Lawrence too after playing at Clemson for like the last 3 years and just dominating.
I don't know, dude. He saw a lot of orange this weekend. I mean, there was a lot of orange in the stands. It looked like he was at a Clemson game, and they didn't even sell out. I think that's one thing, too, you can notice. There's like, I would say Denver's a destination for football. If we have a good team, like we're going to pull in big-name people to come play here.
Yeah.
One, we're going to find out on Sunday with how the Denver fan base is finally back, and we're 2-0 for the first time since, 2017 or whatever when Case Keenum was here. So it's one of those things, it's like, we finally have a good football team. We're 2-0, and we're coming home. That place is going to be rocking. Like, football's back, and this is the first time they're going to have like fans back in over a year. So it's one of those things. It's like, how do rookie quarterbacks handle? He was at BYU.
He's going to come into a really hostile environment. That's for sure.
He's going to come into a hostile environment, but he's also going to come into a fan base that's like, a true fan base. The Jets fan base, they might have some good fans there, but they're not like. They're like, oh, he threw 4 picks. Get rid of him. Like, it's his second career game.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think New York's exactly known for the Jets. Out of all their teams there, I don't think the Jets are like the team that everyone roots for. You know what I mean?
The Giants will probably be number 1 there for football for a while.
Yeah.
Unless they have Mark Sanchez.
It's like the Giants and the Yankees basically are like the teams for New York, I feel like.
Yeah, they got to say the Knicks, too.
Well, and the Knicks, but the Knicks have just been dog shit for like 20 years, so.
Yeah. All the New York teams have been dog shit.
It's really weird, actually.
You got the Brooklyn Nets, but I hope they stay dog shit.
Well, the Yankees, aren't the Yankees pretty solid? I don't pay enough
good
attention to baseball, but yeah, the Knicks and the Jets have been terrible for years now, so. Oh, well. I mean, if you're in New York, you have like 90 sports teams to root for.
But also, fuck you.
All right. It's really aggressive.
That's just how New York was. I've never been to New York, and I'm never going to New York.
We were actually I'm not going to get into it. Never mind. That's going to
be
I was going to go on a really weird tangent, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about football. But yeah, I mean, I think I pretty much covered all I wanted. I mean, we shot the shit about the NFL through week 2. That's kind of all I wanted to cover.
Maybe we'll come back here in like 6 weeks after like week 8 with more of an in-depth of how we truly feel the season's playing out and give you more of an honest opinion at that point instead of this is kind of like a.
You want to touch on college football real quick before we wrap up?
College football, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen. Clemson doesn't look like Clemson. The only team that's strong out there is Alabama, but Florida made them look weak.
So what I was going to say is I watched the entire first half of Florida-Bama, and so Bryce Young is Bama's new quarterback, right? He's their new guy, freshman quarterback.
Making like $1.2 million. Yep.
At the end of the first quarter of the Florida game, he had like 130 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. First quarter.
Yeah.
And they're up by like 3 touchdowns or more, 3 touchdowns and a field goal or whatever it was. And I'm like, all right, before halftime, Florida gets like 3 stops in a row on defense. I'm like, okay, Florida, big time national program, SEC program, they're going to make Bama work for it. But I'm like, I was just so blown away by the weapons that Bama has on offense. I mean, when you watch Bama,
I got another like 6'3", 280-pound running back.
I was telling Taya, I'm like, when you watch Bama, like I've watched a lot of college football through the first 3 weeks so far this year, and really any other team from any other conference on any given Saturday is going to be a pretty even matchup. A lot of them will, except for Bama. They're just on this whole other stratosphere of college football, and because every guy they have at every position is like the best of the best from the country. So they have like this amazing new freshman quarterback. They have an amazing, gigantic beast of a running back. All their receivers are like the fastest people I've ever seen. After
they catch
the
ball, offensive line.
Yeah, they have this gigantic, really good offensive line. I'm like, they're just operating on all cylinders all the time. Like when you play Bama, you have to play like Florida did, the best game you're going to play all season, and even still, it wasn't enough to beat Bama. So
it was close, though. They were a 2-point conversion away.
I was really disappointed I didn't watch the second half because I watched the first half, and I'm like, I think Bama's just going to run away with this. I mean, Florida's stopping them here and there, but like I don't think that's going to keep up in the second half. And so I turn it away, watch something else. And sure enough, I come back. I'm like, oh, fucking sick. They only won by 2. I missed a really exciting second half. But anyway, yeah, there's been some. I think what was it last weekend? So not this past one, but the one prior. Oregon beat Ohio State, so Oregon's like looking like the real deal out of the Pac-12 this year.
The only team that looks good out of the Pac-12.
Yeah. Hey, my New Mexico State Aggies won this weekend, so they're 1-3.
First win in program history.
Yeah, they beat South Carolina State, so 1-3. Go Aggies.
My Western Mountaineers are 3-0.
Hey, nice.
Yeah, and I think they play Fort Lewis this week, so they should win, and then they go to travel out to like the number 5 ranked team in Colorado School of Mines. So.
Oh, great. Yeah.
We'll see how much they're really good.
Yeah. But I've been enjoying the college football. There's been some really exciting games so far this year. And
I just like that it's besides – I wouldn't even say Alabama's a surefire thing this year. They don't look as dominant as I expected them to. Their first 2 games they did, but I'm like, you played Miami, who didn't look good at all.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And then you played like Stony Brook or whatever, like some bad team, so I expect you to win.
That's the thing. Like every year, Bama is – far and away the best team in the country, basically, every year. And yet, I feel like half the Saturdays I tune in college football, they're playing like Mercer. And I'm like, why the fuck is Mercer on Bama's schedule? Why don't they play tougher teams?
Got to bring in them millions.
It bugs me that it's like, why aren't they playing? I want to see Bama every week playing like a top 25 team.
Yeah.
Because that would be the only reason it's even entertaining to watch. Because if they play Mercer or Stony Brook, it's going to be 63-7 every time they match up. It's not even going to be close.
But I mean, like the Big 12, you have Oklahoma, but Nebraska, who hasn't looked good all year, made Oklahoma not look good.
Yeah, they only beat Nebraska by like 7 points or something.
Texas,
or 8 points.
Who was supposed to be like the second best Big 12 school, went and played Arkansas, and they got smoked the week before. Yeah. So it's one of those things. It's like, what's happening? The Big Ten, you got Ohio State losing, and everyone's like, oh, they're the cream of the crop with the Big Ten. Penn State's looking great. Iowa looks just fucking.
Iowa's really good.
Like a team I've never seen from there before. They've always had like a top 10 program, I feel like. They just couldn't get over like the Ohio State hump.
Right.
Michigan State's undefeated, looking good.
Penn State beat Auburn this past Saturday.
Auburn looks good. That was a fun game to watch.
That was a fun
Auburn
game.
Looks good. They went into a whiteout, which hasn't happened in at Penn State in a year and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
And they played till the end of the game. That was a very good game. Auburn looks good. Ole Miss looks good. Florida looks good. Georgia looks really good.
So
Clemson doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So, like, the ACC is wide open. Florida
Yeah.
State's 0-3, I'm pretty sure. They lost to an FCS team.
Yeah.
And then they
That's
lost to
not
Jacksonville State,
Yeah.
or maybe that was the FCS team. But they lost on the last second Hail Mary. Like,
Yeah.
what is happening with some of these big-name programs?
Dude, this is why college football is so exciting, is you just never know what the fuck's going to happen.
My best, like, thing for this year for college football would be, like, in Iowa, Oregon, Georgia, and not Alabama or Ohio, like just 4 different teams in the college football playoff.
That would be
everyone's sitting there
awesome.
like
That would be
this,
awesome. Yeah.
like Cincinnati.
Just
Maybe
fresh
Cincinnati
blood.
sneaks in.
Yeah. So because they obviously redo the AP top 25 after every week. So coming into week 4, your new top 5 is Bama, Georgia, Oregon, Oklahoma, Iowa. So there were some teams that moved up. There were some teams that moved down. Teams that moved down: Auburn, UCLA. Let's see, Coastal Carolina, Ohio State, and Clemson and Oklahoma all moved down a little bit. And then teams moving up, you had Oregon, Penn State, Ole Miss, BYU, Arkansas, and Michigan. We'll see with Michigan. I never really know, like,
dude, Michigan,
what to think
they come
about
in with
Michigan.
like a lot of hype, and then they play
Yeah.
the big name school like Ohio State, and
Yeah.
they're like hyping that game up. The team up north, or like they don't say each other's names, like this
Yeah,
huge
yeah.
rivalry, and then you go into it and it's like 48-17, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
got all hyped to sit here and watch this game at 10 a.m. and this is the shit I get.
The thing with Michigan, like he said, is that they always come in as this like insanely hyped up team, and like you have this impression in your head of like, oh, Michigan must be really good. But then, like you're saying, they blow out all these smaller schools. But then when it comes to playing like real competition, like Ohio State or something like that, it's like, oh yeah, they're not even in the same.
Bro, speaking of
Ohio State's
Michigan,
gonna
I
easily
think it
win.
was Michigan. It's either Michigan or Notre Dame, I think. I think it's one of those two. Guess what year they first had their first ever night game at their stadium? I think it's Michigan.
When?
It was like, I think it was 2014 or something like that. It was the first ever night game
Huh.
at, I think
I
it was
guess that's
Michigan.
true. They always seem to play at like 10 or 11 in the morning, it seems like.
But
why is that?
You would think a big school like that would have
play a
hosted like a
primetime
primetime
game,
night
yeah,
game, but
Saturday
all their
night game.
primetime games are the 10 a.m. games.
Huh.
But I want to make sure. I want to fact check
Interesting.
myself.
Notre Dame's another one that I never really have a lot of confidence in. They're always like such an overhyped team. Who have they played so far this year? Bro, I swear to God, if I click on this Apple
The Michigan
Music ad and it
Wolverines
takes me
don't
to Apple
have a
Music one more
very
time, I'm
long
gonna
history
fucking
of
throw my
playing
phone.
night games at Michigan Stadium. In fact, the first night game in Michigan football history didn't occur until the 2011 season.
Wow.
So 2011 is when Michigan had their first ever night game at Michigan Stadium. They've obviously played night games elsewhere, but
So, what is that noise? You got some sort of an ad going on?
I guess.
So Notre Dame so far this year they're 3-0, but they beat Florida State, who's now 0-3. They beat Toledo, but by 3, and Toledo is like, who's Toledo? And then they beat Purdue, which again, like Purdue's not going to compete with Notre Dame,
Right.
but like
Purdue's only
they do
known
have
for
Wisconsin coming up this Saturday, and then they play Cincinnati after that. So those are like 2 real games in a row. So we'll see what Notre Dame's all about. One team that I remember we were talking at the beginning of the year going over the top 25 rankings, and one team that I said I didn't have a lot of faith in just by eyeballing it was North Carolina. And sure enough, North Carolina, I watched their very first game, and they dropped their first game.
To Virginia Tech.
And it's I don't know, what's the quarterback's name they have? He's supposedly some Heisman front runner this year, but
I don't know.
they lost to Virginia Tech 17-10, and they have won their second 2 games. They beat Georgia State and then Virginia, but
Georgia State and Virginia.
yeah, real tough teams. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't have a lot of confidence in teams like that. There's just certain teams where I just off the eyeball test, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not counting on them to be making any noise at the end of the year.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't know. I love college football because there's a lot of unknowns, and
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that because this year truly seems like an unknown year.
What are the odds that we end up with Georgia and Bama in the college football playoff again?
As long as Bama doesn't win, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of over the Bama. Like, I want some new teams to usher into this, the franchise of college football.
So
But
one quick thing, one final note, I guess, before we wrap up. But one thing I'm interested in over the next 10 to 20 years of my life watching college football and NFL football and all that kind of stuff is what is going to happen to the Bama program when Nick Saban eventually leaves. I'm very curious to find out what happens to that program.
I'll just say it depends who takes over, because people questioned Ohio State when Urban Meyer left, but I think it's Ryan Day took over, and
they're still really
they didn't
good.
miss a beat. So it just depends who takes over. And again, Alabama's going to be the most coveted job out there.
Yeah.
So they're going to be able to pick whatever coach they want. A lot of people think that Dabo Swinney, when Nick Saban retires, will move from Clemson to Bama.
So, I guess my thing that I'm wondering about is how much of it. It's kind of like the Patriots discussion of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Like, how much of that success was Tom Brady? How much of that success was Bill Belichick? My thing that I'm going to be very curious to find out with Bama is, like, how much of it is Nick Saban and how much of it is that he has just built this self-sustaining machine there,
right,
where they get all the best recruits.
You just
to come
answered
in.
your own question. You go, how much is it Nick Saban or how much is it he's built? So
but what I'm saying is, like, if he leaves, does the machine continue to be self-sustaining?
No,
or is it him that's drawing everyone there?
To me, it would be him, because the coaches recruit, right? I don't go to Alabama just to say I played for Alabama because Alabama was irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
Like CU. CU, to me, is a destination school. They put a shit ton of money in their football program, but they don't have a winning culture right now. They were a national champion. Yeah, they used to be a top 10 team constantly. They were bringing in recruits because the coaches, they were a team to beat. That faded away, so people quit coming here. Nick Saban leaves, depending who they bring in. If it's someone that players don't like, if they bring in Dabo Swinney, of course it's going to keep moving. But he also has his own legacy with Clemson. That it's the same thing.
Yeah.
But if he leaves Clemson and they don't bring someone big in, like Florida State, they had Jameis Winston won a national championship, right?
Yeah.
Then they fire Jimbo Fisher. Now Florida State's been irrelevant since.
That is true.
That to me is a destination school.
Yeah.
But no, they're irrelevant. They're losing. They're 0-3 this year, losing games they should have never lost.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I think it's going to be such a curious case study, because you've had multiple instances of programs, like, take for instance Texas or USC or Oregon or Florida State, where, like, in the past have been national championship level teams and programs year in, year out, and then their big coach leaves, and that program falls from the top of the mountain down to the bottom of the heap.
I'll use Chip Kelly at Oregon.
The one team that has not really had that has been Bama. So it'll be interesting to happen. Like, does the rule that applies to everyone else in college football also apply to Bama, or they're like an exception to the rule?
I think they're they might be an exception depending who they bring in.
Yeah.
It all depends on who they hire, because if they hire someone that can't keep the winning culture there, then
it's just going to fall apart. Probably,
the kids are going to want to go to the next big school.
Yeah.
Right? Because Alabama, before Nick Saban got there, was, I would say an average team. Mm-hmm. He took that job, and all of a sudden it was just like Alabama. And I'm like, when did Alabama become so good? And it was like, you look when Nick Saban got there, from then on, it's just been Alabama.
Well, and obviously I'm not discrediting Nick Saban's coaching ability at all. I'm raising the point of, like, maybe you could plug in a guy who's not quite as good of a coach, and if you still have the same level of recruits every year, you might not miss a beat. You know what I'm saying?
But they've got to be a good enough coach to recruit the good enough players to keep that high level of the athletes there. Like,
the guy did what I was going to say. The guy did win a championship at LSU. So I mean, the guy's
and then
proven
hop ship to Alabama.
He can win outside of Bama. He's proven he can.
So
do that.
I'll take this. Coach. Urban Meyer moves on from Florida.
Yeah.
Great program. You could argue they were the best, program at the time.
Yeah.
They kind of drop off.
Yeah.
Right? They're not as
they're still good, but they're not like national championship every year kind of.
They bring in a couple coaches, nothing's worked now. They have a good, I can't remember who their coach is right now, but he's building a program with strong culture that is bringing in good players, and you can see that with this last week's game against Bama.
Yeah.
It's all about who you bring in to build a strong culture. If Nick Saban leaves and they don't hire the right guy to continue that, Bama's going to fizzle into a mediocre team or like an average team.
I think it's going to be so interesting to watch what happens.
And then it'll become who's the next big ticket.
Right. Yeah, and then who fills that void of, like, now Bama, this big colossal force, is gone. who fills that
fills it
void?
in?
Is it Georgia? Is it Clemson? Is it someone else?
Or is it like Cincinnati that just comes in out of the blue?
Or Iowa, maybe?
Right. So it's one of those things, like, it's all about the culture and the coach in college, in my opinion. Because if you don't have a good coach and you don't have a good culture, kind of like how CU is, I think Carl Durrell is a good coach, and they're building a culture, but it's going to take a couple years.
Dude, okay, real quickly, what's up with your CU Buffs? Because 2 weeks ago, I watched them only lose by 3 points to like a number 8 ranked Texas A&M team.
We're starting a freshman quarterback.
Who'd they play this last week?
Minnesota.
And they didn't even score a point.
Yeah, we didn't have more than 50 yards offense, I don't think.
The fuck is that?
Their offense is bad, and it's just plain and simple. I think we've got a good team. I think we've got good players, but you got to play a solid football game all around. You can't just leave your defense on the field. And the offense, like I said, I don't even think I don't think the offense had more than 50 yards.
I think you're right, because a couple
like
other
53
CU
yards.
fans in my life were telling me that. Well, and I couldn't tell if the offense was bad or not 2 weeks ago, because it's like you play Texas A&M. Maybe their defense is insanely good.
Was bad.
I don't know if they only scored 7 points because Texas A&M's defense is just lockdown, or if their offense sucks. But from what you're saying, it sounds like the offense kind of sucks.
Yeah,
and they turn around and play Minnesota and don't score.
We have really good running backs, but like the O-line just looked like they didn't show up. It's like they put like 2 water boys out there and said, snap the ball and then let your quarterback get hit. So, I mean, it sucks because I like CU. You know, I didn't go there, I'll be honest, but that's like the team. I've always grown up cheering for them. I wanted to go there. I followed my track career somewhere else, you know. But they're my team, and it sucks that they've been like, we had a really good year. We were number 10 in the country, went to the Alamo Bowl, then got blown out by Oklahoma State. Then we lost that team because they all were seniors. But they had stuck together. They built a strong culture that they played so good when it came to team football. And then that disappears when they all leave, and then they've had, you know, different coaches since then. And it's one of those things, it's like, it's all about the culture and who you bring in to bring in those kids. If I was a coach out there and, you know, I had to compete with Nick Saban dropping 25 championship rings on a table in front of the number 1 recruit, but I'm sitting here going, we have a better school. Look at our campus. You know, look at this area. Just think to yourself, what would you rather have? If I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid walking in there, and now that they can make money, I'm going in there going, they're offering me, you know, $1.5 million in an NIL deal. And he dropped 7 championship rings on the table.
You can't compete with
How are you going to take me from Alabama to CU?
Yeah.
CU could be like, well, we could offer you a $750,000 NIL deal or something. You know, CU's a very prestigious school. There's a lot of big names that go there. They've got plenty of money. But they might have more money than Alabama. But are they going to fund somebody like that if they don't have a winning culture? Am I going to get the number 1 recruit to come here? Maybe. If I'm a good salesman as a coach.
Yeah.
And then it's all about how you take that number 1 recruit and you turn him into building your program.
Yeah.
So to me, it's all about the coach. If Nick Saban leaves and they don't bring in the right guy, bye-bye Alabama. Bye-bye Dynasty.
I can see the machine, the self-sustaining machine, just continue to chug if they bring in a guy like Dabo Swinney. I can see that.
Right. And he's already have his legacy of a national championship winning coach at
But like
Clemson.
if it's someone else, I don't know.
It really depends on who
Ryan
it is.
Day, if he goes from Ohio State to Bama, I don't know. I don't know what happens there.
Right. I mean, he has a good culture with Ohio State,
Yeah.
but the Big Ten is different than the SEC.
It's a totally different conference.
And you know, a prime example of this, I think, is Chip Kelly at Oregon. The dude built culture at Oregon.
Yeah.
He built teams at Oregon. Went to the NFL. I think he kind of got exposed in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's at UCLA. They got all hyped up this year. They beat USC. Or no, they didn't beat USC yet. They beat Stanford and they beat LSU. That's who the big name.
Oh,
they beat LSU.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
And,
Week 1.
and then they jump from not ranked to 13th, and then they just lose to Fresno State. So it's one of those things. Is like Chip Kelly has a big name,
Yeah.
but why isn't he building a program like UCLA? Again, UCLA, massive school, tons of money, great location for kids to want to go in LA. What's happening?
Yeah.
So it's all about the culture and who the coach comes in. I don't think there's any coach out there, maybe besides Dabo Swinney, that could replace Nick Saban and keep the success.
He's the one guy that comes to mind where it's like,
now
he seems like a very obvious fit there.
Now, when he retires, because he's not going to get fired and he's not going to just quit abruptly, he's going to retire. How does the Alabama – if I'm an Alabama fan, you have to learn to tamper your expectations. If I'm an Alabama fan now,
Right.
I go in every year going, we should win the national championship.
it's
And you can
basically-
have a legit saying to say that.
National championship or bust every year.
If he leaves, you got to go, hopefully we can get back to the national championship, depending who they hire. If they hire
Yeah.
Dabo Sweeney, they're, same shit. We should win the national championship.
Yeah.
If they hire some guy that some people have heard of, but he's not like, a house name, I got to tamper my expectations down.
Yeah.
Hopefully we win the SEC West.
Yeah.
And then, we'll go from there.
Yeah.
Because they're all
Hopefully-
going to go,
yeah.
we're national championship bound, and then they're going to go,
And then if they don't
6
make
and
the
6 or
college football
something.
playoff, and then everyone loses their minds.
Because I think they went 10-2 one year with Nick Saban. I don't think they made the college football playoff, and it was like, fire Nick Saban, like get rid of him. And I'm like, who are you going to bring in?
Right.
And then the next 5 years, you win national championships.
Yeah,
What the fuck? What do you mean? Fire Nick Saban. You're 10-2. But
Oh man.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to football already now. Now it's Tuesday. Got fucking 2 more days to go. Great.
Yeah, I've been enjoying this college football season, and the NFL season's been really exciting so far through the first 2 weeks. So
I've just been enjoying football.
yeah,
Just love it.
I'm also 2-0 in both my fantasy leagues, so I'm happy about that.
I'm 2-0 in one and 1-1 in the other.
Not bad.
So we'll see. It only matters in our league until the playoffs. All you
Yeah.
got to do is go 1-0 week 1 in the playoffs. And
Yep.
But speaking of that, I need to get with Zach to get plaques made. I have the Sacco
Okay.
above my
Yeah, text him because I don't know. I haven't heard a
Microwave.
fucking peep about what's going on with the
yeah,
trophies,
because
so.
it's Brandon Stevens. Congratulations on being the worst team last year. No, I have a ball sack trophy above my microwave.
All right, should we wrap this up?
Yeah, everyone, thanks for tuning in. Sorry we didn't get an episode out last week. Just life happened, and we're here now. So thanks for tuning in. We'll get an episode out hopefully next week. I think we're gonna do probably something on technology. That was their idea. We just couldn't narrow it down. I'm thinking we do something on like technology and its advancements in the last 20 years because we can kind of touch on that since we've, that's kind of our era of technology. And I kind of think we can just have like a free-floating conversation about it because we can go from dial-up internet and cell phones to, where we're at with like Teslas and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
SpaceX
it might be a
rockets.
broad topic to start with, but we'll just kind of hit some fun points, and that'll, I think, leave it open to some open discussion in another episode. So, we'll be back next week with another episode, and thanks for tuning in.
Till next time, everybody. I thought that was going to be a short one. We went like